Am I the asshole for leaving a family dinner after witnessing a girl? I am still in shock about everything, so I apologize in advance for my rambling. My husband Jake and I have been married for 3 years. From the beginning he was very close with his best friend's sister Cindy, who is 18 years old. Jake would often talk about her, saying how he had seen her grow up throughout the years. Cindy is always very bubbly and seems very fond of Jake as well. I remember when we were dating, Cindy would often ask to come along on our dates. I never really said anything, as I enjoyed spending time with her too. She was like a little sister to me. When we announced our engagement, she told Jake, "You'd better not forget me after you're married. You still have to hang out with me." Well, we got married, and I even made her my bridesmaid. Soon after, we moved to a different state and lost contact for a while. Then Jake's best friend came to stay with us for some time, and Cindy came along too. The moment Cindy saw, the first thing she said was, "Wow, Jake, you've gotten so hot. Glad you don't look like one of those boring married men." Throughout their stay, Cindy would completely ignore my presence and get way too close to Jake. I told Jake that it was starting to look inappropriate, and I asked him to talk to Cindy about it. He said Cindy was just being a bit childish and that she was like that with everyone. On the last day of their stay, we decided to host a dinner party. I was with Jake when Cindy came up to me and said, "I need to steal your husband for a while." Before I could say anything, she grabbed Jake's hand and pulled him away to play games. I ignored it because it was their last day, but then throughout dinner she kept getting way too close to Jake, dragging him away whenever I was around, all while giggling at me. When it was time to sit for dinner, I sat beside Jake, but Cindy came in last. She said, "Oh, there's no seat left." Everyone was surprised. Jake laughed and told her, "Cindy, stop acting like a kid. You're not a kid anymore." Cindy just laughed, saying it was a joke, then got up and sat somewhere else, still giggling at me. I was furious at the disrespect and at the fact that Jake didn't say anything about it. I didn't want to start a scene, so I excused myself, went to my car, and drove off. About an hour later, Jake called me asking where I was. I told him I was at a friend's house and would come back after Cindy had left. I know what I did was probably wrong, but I was so upset. If I had, I might have started crying or fighting. I came back the next day, and Cindy and her family had already left. Jake was really angry, saying I took things too far. I started crying and told him how hurt I felt. He said it was horrible to think such things about Cindy, that she was like a sister to him. I told him that I wasn't doubting his intentions, but I was hurt by how disrespectful Cindy's behavior was, and he was enabling her by not saying anything. Jake said I sounded ridiculous, that I couldn't even take a joke, referring to the lap-sitting incident. I told him that regardless, I didn't want Cindy in our house again. To top it off, Cindy sent me a message saying that she was sorry for making me feel insecure and that she would try to make me feel better, but that I shouldn't have left as it was childish and spoiled the mood. It felt like a backhanded apology, so I didn't reply. I just told Jake that he needs to maintain distance from Cindy. He asked if I was giving him an ultimatum. I told him that if he was going to disregard and disrespect my feelings for Cindy, then yes, I was. This really rubbed Jake the wrong way. He said that since I had such disgusting, he packed a bag and left to stay at his mom's place. I've tried apologizing numerous times, telling him how sorry I am for everything, but he's been ignoring my texts and calls. Later, Cindy's brother Sean texted me, calling me a bunch of names for thinking like that about his sister, saying Jake should just leave me and that a disgusting person like me deserves to be alone. I couldn't stop crying after that. I don't know what to do. Was I in the wrong to deserve all this? I'm really lost right now. Edit for those asking. Jake and I are both 25 years old, just months apart. Update 1. I never thought I'd be writing a post like this, but here I am feeling a mix of confusion anger, and heartbreak. So here's the situation. My husband Jake and I have been married for 3 years. We are both 25, and things have been pretty solid until recently. Jake and I are really close, and I'm proud of the relationship we've built. But it seems that everything came crashing down when his best friend's younger sister, Cindy, came to stay with us. Cindy is 18, bubbly, and, for lack of a better word, always had a kind of special relationship with Jake. He's known her since she was little, and they've always been super close, even before we started dating. In fact, when Jake and I were dating, Cindy often joined us on our dates, and I didn't mind at first because she seemed to be just another part of the group. I liked her a lot. She was like a younger sister to me. When we announced our engagement, she made it clear that she didn't want Jake to forget about her once we were married. We even made her one of my bridesmaids, and I thought things were all good. But fast forward a few years, and things started to get a little. Jake and I moved to a different state, and we lost touch with Cindy for a while, which felt like a bit of a relief. That is, until Jake's best friend came to visit, and Cindy came along. From the moment she walked in the door, it felt like everything shifted. The first thing Cindy said was how hot Jake had gotten since the last time she saw him and how she was glad he didn't look like one of those boring married men now. I was taken aback, but I brushed it off, hoping it was just her being her usual, playful self. But then things got worse. Cindy started acting like I wasn't even there. She would ignore me entirely and latch onto Jake whenever she could. I told him that I felt like it was crossing some boundaries, but he brushed it off, saying that Cindy was just childish and that she was like that with everyone. But I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel like she was being playful. I felt disrespected. The final straw came during a dinner party we were hosting for some friends. As I was sitting beside Jake, Cindy came in and loudly declared that there was no seat left for her at the table. Without waiting for anyone to respond, she plopped herself right onto Jake's lap. Everyone was silent, and Jake, laughing uncomfortably, asked her to stop and move off his lap. Cindy just giggled, got up, but I could barely contain my anger. That wasn't a joke, it was disrespectful. I felt humiliated and my anger boiled over. I didn't want to say anything in the moment, so I excused myself and left. I didn't know how to handle what I was feeling, and if I stayed, I knew I'd start crying, or worse, yelling at everyone. I went to my friend's house for an hour. I know it probably wasn't the best way to handle it, but I couldn't face him or anyone else right then. The next day, Cindy and her family left, and Jake was pissed. He accused me of overreacting, of taking things too far, and said I shouldn't have left like that. I tried explaining to him how hurt I was by the way Cindy had been acting and how his lack of action made me feel like my feelings didn't matter. But Jake wasn't hearing me. He told me I was being ridiculous and that it was just a joke, and I needed to stop being so insecure. Cindy, on the other hand, sent me a message acting all innocent, apologizing for making me feel insecure, but then implying that I shouldn't have left the dinner party as it was childish and ruined the mood. I didn't reply to her message. Instead, I told Jake that I didn't want Cindy in our home again. That's when he hit me with a bombshell. He accused me of giving him an ultimatum and said that if I thought so little of him, maybe he should leave. And that's exactly what he did. He packed a bag and went to his mother's place. I tried calling him, texting him, apologizing for what had happened, but he ignored me. It felt like my whole world had shattered. He wasn't seeing things from my perspective at all, and Cindy's brother, Sean, texted me, calling me names and telling me I was disgusting for thinking that way about his sister. I couldn't stop crying. I don't know if I was wrong in how I reacted, but I felt completely blindsided. Was I really being unreasonable for wanting my husband to set boundaries with his best friend's sister? I felt like everything was falling apart, and now I didn't know if it was even possible to fix things. Update 2. Things have been a whirlwind since the fallout with Cindy, and I can hardly believe how much has happened in such a short amount of time. After Jake left to stay with his mom, I was left in a blur of emotions. I felt confused, hurt, angry, and completely alone. But something unexpected happened that helped me see things more clearly. My mother-in-law called me. I hadn't spoken to her much since the dinner party incident, but she knew there was tension between Jake and me. After hearing that Jake had gone to stay with her, she called me to get the full story. At first I was hesitant to tell her everything, but once I did, I felt a sense of relief. She was furious with Jake as much as I was. She told me that as a husband, it was Jake's responsibility to make me feel like a priority. She said he had failed me when I had to go to him and ask him to set boundaries with Cindy, and that it was his job to protect me in situations like this, not brush them off. She also put things into perspective for me. She asked Jake how he would have felt if I had been sitting on a man's lap at the dinner party. That really got to him, and it seemed like it finally clicked. After that conversation, Jake called me, and we had a long, emotional talk. He apologized for everything. He explained that he hadn't realized how much his inaction had hurt me and how he had just been trying to keep the peace with Cindy, who he'd known for years. He acknowledged that Cindy's behavior was crossing boundaries and that he should have said something to her sooner. But he also admitted that he felt hurt by the way I handled the situation. He was upset that I left without saying anything and that I hadn't checked in on him when he was clearly overwhelmed. He said he didn't know what to do in that awkward moment and tried to laugh things off. He felt accused of being unfaithful or disloyal when all he was trying to do was not cause drama. At that point, I was still hurt, but I could see that Jake was genuinely remorseful. He apologized again, and we talked about how we could improve our communication going forward. My mother-in-law also had a heart-to-heart with me, telling me that I should never be afraid to speak up when something makes me uncomfortable. She said that I had every right to expect respect in my own home, and that Jake had let me down by not defending me. She encouraged me to forgive him, but also emphasized that it was important to rebuild trust and that we needed to work together to set clear boundaries, not just with Cindy, but with everyone. That's when Jake and I decided to take a step towards healing. We agreed that we would go to counseling together to work on our communication and make sure this kind of issue never happens again. It felt like a step in the right direction, but it wasn't easy. Cindy's behavior had thrown us both off balance, and even though I had forgiven Jake, I knew it would take time for me to fully trust him again. Then things got even more complicated. After talking with his mom, Jake reached out to Cindy's brother, Sean, and tried to clear things up with him. However, Sean seemed to have no idea how far Cindy had crossed the line, and he sent me some pretty harsh texts, defending his sister and accusing me of being jealous. Jake was furious when he saw those texts, and he decided that it was time to go no contact with Cindy and extremely limited contact with Sean. He said that he couldn't continue a friendship with someone who didn't respect me or our marriage. After everything, Cindy and her family are now out of our lives for good. Jake and I are working through our issues, and while things are still a bit awkward, we've come a long way. We've decided that counseling is going to help us navigate these difficult conversations better in the future. I know I was hurt by Jake's lack of action, but I also recognize my own role in how things escalated. We've both learned a lot, and I'm hopeful that we'll come out of this stronger. I'm not sure if I can fully put my trust back in Jake yet, but we're committed to working through it. I just hope that moving forward we can both respect each other's boundaries and work together as a team. Thanks to everyone who gave me advice and comfort during this time. It really helped me see things more clearly.